So I heard about Jamstack, what it is. I'm sure it's not related to music, right?
Well, funny you asked that, Frank. I do agree that it's a wonderful name that would maybe sound like music, but actually, at its core, the Jamstack, it gives a name to a set of widely used architectural patterns when building for the modern web. And it stands for JavaScript, APIs, and markup. And JavaScript, as some of you might know, is the runtime layer for the Jamstack. It really enables us to add dynamic behavior to our static content and to our presentation layer. Reusable APIs, with the Jamstack, we have a strict decoupling between the front end and our backend services. And this gives us more autonomy when it comes to deployment strategy and really our development practices. And it also allows us to easily integrate with third-party APIs and services like payment services, authentication, or even AI/ML models and applications. And finally, when it comes to markup, the Jamstack approach is really to pre-build all of our markup upfront and serve it directly to the browser from a CDN. This typically involves a build tool and step where the content is combined with our templates into HTML. Our source files are being transpiled and compiled to JavaScript, and CSS runs through preprocessors or post processors. And you might also wonder, Frank, what are the advantages of using this new thing, the Jamstack? And there's plenty, but a few that are really worth mentioning are better performance because our assets are pre-built and then delivered and deployed to a CDN close to our users. They will automatically experience better performance when using our applications. We also get simplified developer experience. The typical workflow that a developer will experience is actually pushing their code to GitHub, and then the Jamstack platform will build and deploy our application, push it to a CDN close to our users. And because we're shipping only static assets, we really don't have to worry about setting up and configuring our Nginx server or figuring out caching strategies or how our database is scaled based on incoming requests and many other complicated and complex features of modern web development. And as a bonus point, it also has an amazing community that's really eager to build the tools that we need to build applications fast. And they're also great at sharing best practices and building content like this session today. And since we are looking at serverless applications and we're talking about serverless, you might also be wondering, what does the Jamstack have to do with serverless? Well, it turns out that sometimes we might have to really write our own custom backend logic to either securely connect to these third-party APIs and services, or even connect to our database and process some of the data that we have stored there. And to do that without having to worry about managing servers and while still building highly scalable and reliable applications, we can use serverless functions. And Anthony is here to show us a quick demo on how you can use Azure Static Web Apps to build Jamstack applications. Over to you, Anthony.
Awesome. Thanks, Simona. So on my screen here, I have a React app, and it's a pretty basic React app that has some code that calls an API. And this API is located at /API/weather, and it's going to get the response and display it on the screen. And also in the same repository, I have an API folder. And in here is my Azure Functions project. Within it, there is one HTTP function. And this function is pretty simple. It takes a location that is passed in from the React app. It goes and calls a weather API, and then it returns the data back to the React app. So I'm going to go ahead and press F5. And what's happening now is that Visual Studio Code will start the static web app CLI. And then the CLI allows me to run my entire app locally. And it will start the React server. It'll start Azure Functions locally. And it'll also open a browser to my app. And it also attaches debuggers to both the React app and the Azure Functions app. So you can see here that I've hit a breakpoint in my React app. So I can actually do, the normal stuff that I do when I'm debugging an app, such as inspecting, parameters and things like that. And then if I press continue, I actually end up hitting a breakpoint in my function app. And so I can actually debug both my function app as well as my React app together locally without deploying it to the cloud. And you can see that that the app is actually running locally and it's returning the weather. So I'm gonna go ahead and stop this and then switch over to show the GitHub repository that I have. So when I created my Azure Static Web App, what it did was that it actually created a GitHub workflow for me. And this workflow is used to deploy my app every time I push any changes to my repository. So you can see here that I have some actions that have run in the past from me kind of just making changes to my app. And also, if I wanted to submit any pull requests, it will actually stand up temporary environments for me so that I can actually test and test out my deployment before I deploy it to production. And I'm just going to show my app running on my custom domain, and it should come up. And there it is.
Wonderful. Yay.
That is very cold, Anthony.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was super simple, right? And you could debug and everything. That's pretty cool. Well, thank you both. And now we'll go in real time answering question from the chat.